Mr. Speaker, across my congressional district, elementary and secondary school students are packing up their lockers, taking final exams, and saying goodbye to their classmates and homeroom desks for the summer. While our students head into a well-deserved summer recess, our teachers have already started thinking ahead to the next academic year, setting up lesson plans and figuring out what their course curriculums will be. Unfortunately, many of our teachers will be faced with yet another year of stifling, one-size-fits-all testing requirements and deadlines. Instead of enabling our teachers to do what they love and inspiring our children to learn and succeed, they're forced to waste classroom time by preparing and administering redundant and often low-quality tests. Mr. Speaker, it's been nearly 15 weeks since I last spoke on the House floor about the need to provide relief from burdensome testing requirements for our teachers, students, and parents. At the time, the House was actively considering H.R. 5, legislation to reauthorize the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, as well as an amendment that I was pleased to offer with my Democratic colleague, Suzanne Bonamici of Oregon. Our bipartisan amendment, which was adopted and included as part of H.R. 5, offers a solution to the over-testing problem that is taxing our schools and teachers. Our amendment empowers teachers and parents by giving existing federal funding to state and local education agencies to develop curriculum plans to make better use of tests for the students with the ability to reduce testing. It would also allow for quicker delivery of assessment data to educators and parents and a more qualitative analysis of how to shape curriculum for that student from the local school district and parent, not the federal government. Mr. Speaker, we need to continue our work on this bill and reauthorize the ESEA. We owe it to our colleagues who have worked for months on the bill and underlying policy. We owe it to our teachers who have dedicated their livelihood and careers to the betterment of our children. Most of all, we owe it to our children, who deserve the best possible education that we can provide, an education that encourages them to think, learn, and succeed, and not that simply tells them how to fill in blanks on a generic test. For those of my colleagues who may be undecided on advancing this bill and reauthorizing the ESEA, I ask you to consider, are you happy with the status quo? Are you content to sit on the sidelines while common standards and a myriad of tests are imposed on our students? I'd like to read into the record a letter I received from the superintendent of my home school district. Let me preface this by saying it was not written to me as a member of Congress, but rather as a taxpayer in the Westchester School District. I read this because there's no better example of a need and an opportunity for us to help our families back home do our job and govern here in Congress. It reads, "Dear parents, many of us are quick to fault the U.S. public education system, comparing it to other small European countries and finding deficits and gaps. The system and the way it's funded are far from perfect. However, we managed to educate generations of children who go on to do incredible things. We're now asking our students to do something that's entirely unfair, to spend weeks and weeks filling in bubbles, taking standardized tests, and having their entire educational ambition directed towards passing them. This is not what public education was intended to do, nor should it do. As superintendent of the Westchester School District, I believe in very high standards for our students. I believe in accountability. I believe that tests can be a good thing, but not the way we're being forced by the government to give them. We officially begin the PSSA testing window on April 13 and continue testing through May 27 when we finish with the high school Keystone exams, a new graduation requirement. Beginning with the class of 2017, even a straight A student who doesn't do well on these tests won't receive a diploma under state law. State and federally mandated testing has been around for a long time and is certainly here to stay, but it's become a massive burden that is stifling creativity and love of teaching and learning. While our school district has embraced high standards and accountability, we now spend the first 7 months of the school year preparing to take 3 standardized tests. Then we spend approximately 6 weeks giving tests to students. Unlike private and parochial schools, public schools are mandated to use these tests to determine graduation for students and for teacher and administrator evaluations. It's positively stressing us and our system to the max. Our teachers, students, and parents all say the extreme amount of time focused on testing is causing ridiculous amounts of stress in the classroom, faculty room, and our homes. The angst is palpable as you walk through our hallways. Where is the time for creativity in teaching? Where is there time for exploration and collaboration? Our talented staff do their very best to find ways to incorporate what needs to be tested into their dynamic lesson plans, but it's difficult given the time constraints and enormous amount of material being covered. Ultimately, that negativity is going to drive down our test scores. Learning should be challenging, but it should also be enjoyable and exciting. Teaching should be dynamic and creative. We're missing so much of that because of these tests. I'm not advocating a system without any kind of testing, rigor, or accountability, but what we're doing right now isn't working. Teachers have literally sent me hundreds of examples of how students are worried, anxious, and depressed. The rules for taking these exams are crazy as well. Springtime in a school should be full of excitement and learning, but not anymore. The last 3 weeks of our schools have looked more like prisons than educational institutions. The rules allow students to take as much time as they need, but once they close the book, the session is over and they can't return it. Let's reauthorize the ESEA. Let's reduce the federal footprint over public education. It's the right thing to do. I yield back.